Welcome to Guarding the Heart. This is Jerry Aiken, pastor at Pierce Chapel Methodist Church, and I'm so glad that you've joined me for this time that we have together. Today, we are going to be talking about the condition of the heart of our nation, which is kind of a troubling topic. So there might be some pretty heavy things that are brought up in this. I don't have a guest today, so I'm not really just going off the rails on my own. This is somewhat put together, but yeah, it will just be me here today. And I pray that what is discussed here, what is shared here, will be conducive to your spiritual journey and will help you guard your heart and prepare you for whatever God has to say to you through the power of His Holy Spirit. Before we go any further, I'm going to open with a word of prayer. Spirit of truth, move upon us. Let us live this day in a state of confession. Let us be truthful about who you are, who we are, who you are to us, and who we are because of you. Search our hearts, search our souls, our minds, our intentions, our ambitions, and bring whatever you find to the surface so that we may see it with clarity. Search our doubts, our frustrations, our distractions, and all the other things we tuck into the shadows, and bring them before us into the light. Make us confront them there. Let us be truthful about our refusals. Let us resist our complacencies and our waning passions for the work that you call us into. We are only restored, only renewed, when we are truthful before you, confessing the things that pain us. So we confess them now, in the name of the one who is truth. Amen. Okay, so the point of this show, if you're new to it, is to highlight the need to guard the heart. For as we read in Scripture, in the book of Proverbs, it says, guard the heart, for everything you do flows from it. And we've talked on here about how we do that, how we take time for rest, for Sabbath, how we take time to be intentional with God, how we find our identity in Him, all these different things. And we'll have a lot more to come in the episodes ahead. But today, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're going to talk about the heart of the nation. Because when I see the heart of the nation or the heart of the culture right now, it's very, very disturbing. And you can say, well, that's the world. That's the secular world. I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. That's true. We as believers are called to be separate, in the world, but not of it. Unfortunately, the heart of the culture often influences us. And we take on things in our heart that reflect the heart of the culture, the heart of the nation. And then we bring that into the church. And so then not only is the individual heart corrupted, but the heart of the church becomes corrupted. So it's very important for us to look at what's going on in our society, in our culture, and do what we can, individually and as a church, to counter that, to be something different. Last week, someone attempted to assassinate a former president of the United States of America. Now, I'm not interested in whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or anything like that. I'm going to say right out of the gate, no matter where you stand, no matter what your political stance on things may be. Assassination is not good. It should never be celebrated. Loss of life should never be celebrated. And just like one side should not rejoice that a presidential candidate is sick or showing signs of dementia, the other side should not rejoice that a presidential candidate and a former president had an attempt on his life. But that's exactly what I started to see immediately in the aftermath after this. All I could think that day that it happened was, thank goodness that the nation doesn't have to go through something like that. Witnessing on live television the assassination of a former president. That would be a horrible thing. I don't care which president you're talking about. That was my initial thought. But in the aftermath, I started seeing people say things like, well, I wish the shooter didn't miss. Horrible. What does that say about the heart of the nation? And you can say, well, that's only some people, or that's only, half the political spectrum. But no, I see this kind of thirst for vengeance and retribution on all sides. And we're fueling each other from every angle. And it's time that we, and I mean all of us, look in the mirror and say, what's going on inside me? What's going on in my heart? Do I have anger? Do I have a heart of peace or a heart of war? Things may happen that you don't like. There may be evil at work all around you. But that doesn't mean that we become evil ourselves, that we become hateful ourselves, ever, no matter what. There's a story, this is from Boonville Elementary. This is a story about a school guidance counselor, an elementary guidance counselor in North Carolina. And I'll be honest, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, I do. I have a lot of feelings about this, but the feelings are layered, okay? This guidance counselor in North Carolina named Amanda Brewer, right after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, she posted, I'm currently sitting on the beach this afternoon, disturbed by the fact, sickened with myself, that I was disappointed the shooter missed when I saw the news yesterday. I have allowed that horrible man to make me bitter enough to have such an experience. I was horrified when folks on social media posted they hoped he would die when he had COVID back in 2020. Have I become that cynical? I clearly need to do some reflecting and some work. Okay. Like I said, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but the very first thing I'm going to say about this is it's a shame that was ever in her heart. It's a shame that would ever be in anyone's heart, that they're disappointed the shooter missed. That's terrible. To her credit, I'm going to say she made herself very vulnerable by admitting that and then saying she was disgusted with herself for feeling that way. In other words, she was looking in the mirror and she didn't like what she saw. The condition of her heart was bad, but she had the self-awareness enough to say the condition of my heart is bad and I've got some work to do. Okay? So, yeah, someone with that kind of hatred in their heart, I don't like the thought that they could possibly be counseling children. But she had the wherewithal to look in the mirror and say, I don't like what's going on here. And the vulnerability to share that. Now, in the aftermath, after she posted this, the angry mob that saw this started calling for her resignation immediately. And maybe she should have resigned because, like I said, someone who's in charge of walking children through their feelings shouldn't have that kind of hatred in their heart. But there was an angry mob that went after her. And they weren't going to be satisfied until she lost her job, which she did. So, again, on both sides, there are people with very angry hearts that want vengeance and comeuppance. How did we get here? How did we get here? I think there are two things that cause the heart to be this way. And the first one is pride or lack of humility. You can think, okay, well, what does being humble have to do with having a heart that's not vengeful and angry? Well, humility, to have a heart that's centered in humility, rooted in humility, means to have a heart that looks beyond yourself all the time. I love the C.S. Lewis quote. I've used it many, many times in sermons. I don't even know how many times, but it's a great quote. He says, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. In other words, humility and wringing our hands and saying, woe is me, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I'm no good. That's not what humility is. Humility is just simply what Paul said when he said, consider others before yourself. Don't be self-centered. Send your love outward, your thoughts outward. Open your eyes and your ears outward to others. Be ready to sympathize, empathize, consider the needs of others before your own. Humility is thinking of yourself less. What's the opposite of humility? Pride. And for some reason, we've gotten it in our heads that pride is a good thing. It's not. Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is mentioned 58 times in the Bible, and it's never good. Ever. What does the Bible say about pride? Well, the book of Proverbs says pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before the fall. The book of James says God opposes the proud. The prophet Isaiah says the pride of your heart will deceive you. Over and over again, we see in the Bible that pride is mentioned, and it's never good. 58 times it's mentioned, and it's never good. Pride is simply arrogance. It is an obsession with the self. And somehow or another, we've become convinced that it's a virtue. We say things like, take pride in your work. What does that mean, take pride in my work? Does that mean feel puffed up about the job that I did? Well, I mean, I'm not saying don't do your best. Of course, do your best. But do your work for the glory of God, not for the glory of yourself. When you take pride in your work, you're saying, I'm happy that I did this. I can boast on this. It's an arrogance, giving glory to the self. And we throw these phrases out all the time. I'm proud of this. I'm proud of that. Take pride in this. And the word itself has lost a lot of meaning because we start to say things like, I'm proud of you, instead of congratulations. Or we use the word pride. A lot of times we think of the pride festivals, right? The pride movement, Pride Month, the LGBTQ stuff. But even that is I'm celebrating me and what I want to do and who I am. or who I feel like I am, or whatever it is. Pride is never a good thing. We need to find a different word for when we want to say that we're proud of somebody. I don't know that there is a different word, but we don't always mean that we're arrogant. I understand that. When I tell my son I'm proud of him, for whatever, or tell my daughter that I'm proud of her, I'm not being arrogant. I'm saying, good job. You've made me happy. But the problem is the root of the word pride. It really means selfish motivation, giving glory to the self, accomplishment, being boastful about your accomplishment, or trying to take the glory away from someone else. Think about that. When you say you're proud of somebody else's work and it doesn't have anything to do with you, why are you proud? Pride isn't good. Pride keeps us looking at ourselves constantly. And when we're looking at ourselves constantly, we get easily agitated by the things that oppose us. And so if it comes to, the political realm, which right now it seems like everything is in the political realm. This is an election year that's very, very tense. But if we're not going to get our way, if things aren't going to work out the way we want it to, then there's anger. Or somebody gets hurt, somebody gets sick, somebody gets betrayed. And we either feel anger or we wish it was even more so. And all of that is because we've become very self-consumed, self-indulgent people. We need to be thinking of ourselves less. Humility. Why is humility not praised like it should be? Why is it not celebrated like it should be? And we can't celebrate our own humility, or else that wouldn't be humility. But we should definitely celebrate it in each other when we see it. Humility is the condition of our heart that causes us to think outside ourselves, to love beyond ourselves, and to consider, even when someone else is hurt or going through something, even if it's somebody we don't agree with or necessarily even like, it still allows us to empathize. But we've lost it, at least in the nation. And it's up to the church to be different. And we're the church. You're the church. Okay, we got to take a break from that because I know that was intense. Okay, I got a little bit emotionally involved as I was speaking there, which is not a bad thing. But let's take a step back and let's have a good news report. Okay, I'm happy to report back from annual conference. I went to annual conference at Epworth by the Sea on St. Simon's Island. It was a great time, seeing old friends and colleagues and sort of making those connections once again. But the thing that I want to report back that is very good news is that in the course of the conference, or during the course of the conference, there were 6 deacons ordained. There were 11 elders, or full-fledged pastors. We refer to in the Methodist Church as pastors, as elders. 11 of them were ordained. So 17 total people ordained at the South Georgia Annual Conference this year. 12 more people entered into the candidacy process for ordination in the future. Now, this may not matter much to you if you're not a global Methodist, or maybe you're not a Methodist of any stripe, but this is important. Because what this shows is that even though this is just a microcosm of the church, okay, this is just one denomination, it's just one little pocket of the country, it's not even all of one state, it's just one part of the state of Georgia in one denomination. God is moving. God is calling people, and people are answering. And that's a wonderful thing. Because even when it feels like the wheels are coming off in our country sometimes, if you look at the news and you get depressed about what the world is coming to, this proves God is not silent, God has not stopped moving, and people have not stopped responding to God. Some people have, but there are still people that are responding to God and stepping into that invitation. These people listed here, 12 preparing themselves for full ordination and 17 that have been fully ordained, they are ready to touch countless lives through the giving of sacraments, through preaching of the word, through visitation, seeing people in the hospital, for comforting grieving families at funerals. These people are going to make a big difference for the kingdom of God here on earth. And just so we're clear, this is only just a small part of what God is actually doing, because He's calling all of us everywhere, not just to ordained ministry, but to all kinds of ministry. And I look around at Pierce Chapel and I see people answering the call to teach Bible studies, to help in Sunday school, children's Sunday school, to deliver bread to visitors, to trim weeds and bushes around the barn before our outdoor service. People are answering the call. God is moving and people are receptive to it. And that is good news. That is worth celebrating. Okay, I said there were two things about the condition of the heart. Two things that are keeping us from being more receptive to the heart of Christ, which we all could have. The first one was pride, or the lack of humility. What's the other one? I believe it's fear. People are fearful of an unknown future. The future is never known, ever. We spend our entire lives not knowing what's going to happen next. But yet we live like this is some sort of new revelation to us. We're always fearful, it seems like, of what's going to happen. And some of that has to do with, rumors, media, whatever. People are good at stirring up fear. If this happens, it's the end. If that person becomes president, then this horrible thing is going to happen. And I mean, that's the thing I've heard from both sides. Well, if we don't get our way, this is the end of democracy. Like both sides are saying that, right? And the whole thing is to introduce fear. That's all it is. Now, sometimes fear is founded on truth. Right? There are times where the future does look like it's going to get messy. And so rather than living into fear, we have to be wise. We have to know what we're going to do to counter that. I'll give you an example. All of the things that have been happening in the United Methodist Church the last few years, people were saying the discipline's going to change, the stance on marriage is going to change. You can see in the seminaries they're already loosening up on our understanding of the confessions and the creeds and all of this stuff. And so the United Methodist Church is going to change. Okay, those concerns were warranted because it all did change. But in the moments, the weeks, the months, even the years leading up to it, people were so fearful of it that they couldn't think straight. And You had some people saying, well, we need to stay and make sure that we change it from within. And you had other people saying we need to get out and become independent. And you had other people saying, no, let's get out and start a new Methodist denomination. And it wasn't even so much the future that people were fearful of anymore. They were fearful about how to step into it. And at Pierce Chapel, we went through this about a year and a half ago, and I saw anger, and I saw division, and I saw people living into their fear and turning on each other as a result. And again, the fear wasn't about what might happen in the UMC, because that turned out to be true anyway. The fear was more about, what do we do about it? What do we just wait and see? Do we get out? Do we join another denomination? What do we do about it? And all of that fear really brought out the worst in some people. And I'm not just saying here at Pierce Chapel. I saw that across the conference. I saw that with friendships I have outside the church. I saw it in other churches that I have friends that pastor. And now, the dust is kind of settled, and close to 75% of what once was the South Georgia Conference of the UMC is going to no longer be in the UMC. So people made their decisions about getting out and how to get out and what to do after they got out. But leading all the way up to it, there was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of grief. When you have fear and hurt and grief and all of that, it's easy to let your heart become cold to others that you don't agree with. And again, I'm talking about the heart of the nation, but I'm talking about how the heart of the nation has affected our hearts and how we've brought that into the church. Blessed are the peacemakers. We're not meant to have hearts of war. We're called to love as Christ loves his church. We're called to love each other, to be there for each other. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions. Sometimes we have to step out of one thing so that we can go in the direction God is calling us. And sometimes that's a tough thing to do. It's scary. And we may lose friends in the process, unfortunately. But as far as it is up to us, we should keep the peace. We should do what God is calling us to do, but continue to hold love for each other in our hearts. We can't do that if we're living in fear. And we can't do that if we're living with pride. Again, I pray for the church. I pray that the church can be countercultural, because the heart of the culture really does bother me right now. The heart of the nation bothers me. And like I said, this assassination attempt, it's kind of like COVID. When COVID happened, initially I thought maybe this would bring the country together, but it revealed all the cracks under the surface is really what it did. This assassination attempt, I think, revealed a lot about the American psyche. And people got angry, or they got, I don't know, people got weird, okay? There's people everywhere that got weird. I mentioned people who were disappointed in what happened, or that it wasn't worse than it was. That's horrible. But I'll tell you what's equally as horrible. A lot of people were just kind of numb to it. And that really, really is concerning. If a former president, again, I don't care what side, Republican or Democrat, if a former president has an attempt on his life and it doesn't stir anything within you, then that means we become callous and cold to everything that's happening. And we're not supposed to have hearts that are callous and cold. We don't We aren't called to complacency. We're called to have tender hearts. And you can say, well, tender hearts get wounded, they get hurt, they get broken. Of course they do. They're tender. But we are called to have tender hearts. And if we guard our hearts, if we prepare our hearts for the love of God and for the love of God to be shown and experienced through us, our hearts have to be tender. You know, in the book of Revelation, Jesus told that lukewarm church, I wish you were hot or cold, but you're neither, so I want to spit you out of my mouth. We can't have lukewarm hearts. I'm not saying we should have angry, hateful, hurtful hearts, but at least those hearts are still feeling something. When our hearts become numb, then we're really in trouble. Tender hearts. Tender hearts rooted in humility and in hope, not in fear. And I want to close this with a word of hope. I was running today. I have a running playlist that I listen to, and it's a lot of songs, and I put it on shuffle. That way I'm not listening to the same thing every day when I run because, well, that would be boring. But today, as I was running, this song came on. As it's a song by Jordan Feliz called Jesus is Coming Back. And I love these words. I'm going to close with this. Have you ever thought that the world has kind of lost its way? Well, yeah, Jordan, that's what I'm sitting here talking about. But he goes on. Have you ever thought the world has kind of lost its way? Crazy as it seems, I know it's going to be okay. It doesn't scare me. It's temporary. There's something better we got forever, and it won't be long because we know help is on the way. So keep your head up. Jesus is coming back. No, don't you give up. Jesus is coming back. And when the world gets complicated, we're going to keep on celebrating because we know Jesus is coming back. He is coming back. And he's also wanting to come into your life, into your heart, into your thoughts, flood your mind with his mercy and his goodness. But you got to keep your head up. You have to be hopeful. Even when the world has lost its way, keep your head up and keep your heart ready. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you again next time. Take care.